Yeah, he's on those. And he's cooking this. The teacher's like.
I'm looking up at their hash marks, which is so weird to me. They're both confident with me.
Fire. Go back to your old job, okay? You're no longer allowed. That's really appreciated.
I don't know, it wasn't making that noise when he left it.
It was.
Okay.
All right, it is 6:03 on the 20th September. This is Robert Stevenson. I'm going to call to order the regular meeting of the Southwick College Granville Regional School District School Committee. Can I get a motion to start the meeting?
So much.
Right. Maybe a show of hands to start the meeting. Give me the record show. Motion passes 7-0-0. Apologize for our technical
Noisemaker over there?
today. We've got, let's see, can I get everybody to stand for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have in your packets, the minutes from our meeting on September the 7th. We'll get a motion to accept the minutes.
So. Second.
Anybody have any questions on the minutes? Any questions here to get show of hands to accept the minutes? Let the record show the motion passes 7-0-0. Okay, we have some warrants going around. I think I might be the only one left to sign on them. Superintendent Willard, do we have any correspondence this evening?
No, we do not.
Takes us to our first public comments section. I do not believe we have anybody here for public comment. If we do, speak now or for no public comment. All right, Lucas, student advisory report.
All right. Time to pull out the big essay.
Oh, the big S.
Yeah, this is
We
gonna be a
only,
long.
we only have a short time tonight, Lucas. This isn't like a 20-minute report, right?
Oh,
I'm
probably.
joking.
All right, well, fall sports have gone to full swing. It's been a lot less rainy than the last time. So the girls soccer tied their game against Granby last week and have a game against Northampton today. Field hockey plays Westfield today at 4. Marissa is currently playing this game and therefore couldn't come, but she sent her regards. This is one of 3 games they will have this week, and volleyball has yet to lose a game. Girls and boys cross country is met today versus WTA. I don't know what that stands for.
What's that?
Western Technical Academy.
Makes sense.
And they both won.
That's pretty good. Good. We're getting better. Besides a few games being postponed due to rain, fall sports are going great. Now, class elections are coming up this week. Class officer speeches will take place tomorrow, and voting will take place on Friday the 23rd. Now, I'm running for vice president, so I know you're supposed to be unbiased, but maybe if you could put in the good word. And seniors painted their parking spots on September 10th, and it was a great event. We were supposed to have a presentation from Marissa, but I do not have access to it, so next time. I'm sure it looks great though, so you'll see soon. And besides that, a largely uneventful week at school. This is a good thing, fortunately. Not a bad thing. I'd rather not have any bad events going on. And finally, in a few weeks after student council elections, students will be looking up to plan a spirit week. Homecoming for freshmen and sophomores will also be coming up. That's it.
Homecoming for freshmen and sophomores?
Oh, yeah,
What is
it looks like they're bringing back. I think it's kind of like a dance. I'm not totally sure because we never got to do it. But,
This was a casualty of COVID, is what you're
Yeah.
telling us?
Yeah.
well, I'm sure they'll have fun. They'll figure it out when the time comes.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much, Lucas.
You're welcome.
All right, that takes us on to our education presentation. First up is I Decide. Got Mr. Pescatelli here and a couple people online with us.
And is it okay if I,
Absolutely, go ahead.
Yeah.
It looks like our lectern's gone, so you can go right from where you're at.
it's all right. So thank you, everybody. No, I'm fine. Thank you. I wanted to be able to take the opportunity to be able to present to you all this opportunity that we ended up learning about through really backing up through COVID, in the midst of COVID, where we're all familiar with the issues that we face and our students face around vaping and other substance use. We had found working with different schools and different partners around the state. We had created our own educational diversion in-house. When I learned of iDecide and the group, the initiative that they had going with Mass General, the Department of Public Health and partnered. I had connected with Carolyn Gray and Dr. Schuster and learned about a little bit more in depth around iDecide. I feel like this initiative around being able to provide education for kids and families and support around their struggles, specifically vaping, that's a huge focus of ours, but also substance use is important. It's critical. Our kids do struggle with it. Our families do struggle with that knowledge of their kids, particularly engaging in that risky behavior. I'd like to read a little intro of each of them, just a bio for each. They are pretty well accomplished, individuals, and I just would like to highlight them, and they're going to steal the show from me. So I am very appreciative that they're taking the time tonight to be able to share around the iDecide program. Dr. Randy Schuster is an assistant professor at Harvard Medical School, director of neuropsychology at the Center for Addiction Medicine at Massachusetts General Hospital, and licensed clinical psychologist. Dr. Schuster's program of school-based research is aimed at defining the etiological determinants of early substance use, as well as elucidating the behavioral, biological, and environmental factors that promote both risk and resiliency from adolescent onset substance use. For workplaces, a particular emphasis on vulnerable subpopulations, including adolescents with and at risk for neuropsychiatric illness. Dr. Schuster's research priorities also involve the translation of basic research findings to the development and dissemination of tailored school-based intervention and prevention efforts for adolescent substance use, and the application of findings to scientifically guided policy decision making. And Carolyn Gray, project manager with iDecide, working within the Center for Addiction Medicine at Mass General. Carolyn Gray is a project manager for Center for Addiction, where she primarily participates in the ongoing research and development of the iDecide program. Her professional interests including increasing access to culture-responsive prevention, treatment and recovery resources and services for substance use disorders. She has previously worked with the American Academy of Addiction Psychiatry, where she was a project manager of the SAM HSA funded initiative, the Opioid Response Network, as well as the Graken Center for Addiction at Boston Medical Center. Prior to her work in project management, she was a staff therapist at South Bay Community Services, where she provided community-based behavioral health services in the South Coast region of Massachusetts. I've been working pretty closely with them through last year. I presented with them at the assistant principal conference back in April. I think very highly of them and their work, and I'm happy to be able to continue to work with them. So I'm going to give you guys the floor. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Good to see you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us there. Sorry, it's in 2 dimensions, but alas, our reality. And apologies in advance for sounding like this and for the tea. I have 2 small toddlers at home and the germs are very real. So if I have a coughing fit, I'm going to pass along to Caroline, but on cue. But thanks for having us here today. We're really excited to give you some information about this program that we're really passionate about, and that we are going to be partnering with 103 schools across the state over the next few months to implement. I'll give you details about the program. I will warn you in advance. This is something I can talk about for hours. So I have some slides that can kind of guide our discussion, but would love for you to interrupt as we're going along, ask questions. My goal for today is to give you all a very high bird's eye overview of the program, why we developed it, what is involved in the program, and how we're going to be evaluating it. So we are in a unique phase of this project where, we developed this program, started March 2020 is when we first put pen to paper for this program. And we were planning on, I'm a scientist by training, that's my bread and butter of my work, and planning on, before we implemented this in schools across the state, that we would conduct, an intensive clinical trial. And then COVID hit, and the need for early intervention supports in schools intensified. And our plan for a pilot of 5 to 10 schools was quickly increased. So we put out a call for schools in May 2020, which I don't need to tell you all this, is probably the worst time in educational history to ask schools to move quickly to commit to a new program. We were, as I said, we were hoping for 5 to 10 schools, and in 2 weeks we had 64 schools on board. So this small pilot grew very quickly. So there is this partnership with the 103 schools that we're going to be working with involves some data collection as well. So I want to give you some an overview of what those activities involve, and give you guys the opportunities to ask any questions you have. So very, very informal on our end. Please interrupt, ask questions as we go along. Caroline, anything to add before I pull up my slides?
I don't think so. Great to meet you all. Great to see you again, Mike.
Yeah. All right, I'm just going to share my screen if that's okay with everyone here. There's my GermFest children. All right. Okay. Okay, so IDECIDE stands for Drug Education Curriculum Intervention. Can everyone, you guys can see my screen? Okay. Yeah, okay, good. Drug Education Curriculum Intervention, Diversion, and Empowerment. And so this program, this has been a collaborative effort from the start. We are funded almost exclusively by the Department of Public Health in Massachusetts. They are the ones who reached out to us and tasked us with putting this program together. We received some small funding from the Dalio Philanthropies, but like I said, 99.9% is coming from the Department of Public Health. They have also been involved from the get-go in putting this program together. So our development team is my team at Mass General and Harvard Medical School, the Department of Public Health, specifically the Bureau, the Office of Youth and Young Adult Services, and the Bureau of Substance Addiction Services, as well as folks from the Institute of Health and Recovery. And we have scientists, clinicians, and researchers involved in developing this program. So I'm going to show you just a very brief overview, just to give you a sense of the program, and then I'll walk you through the details.
Si quieres ahorrar tiempo y mejorar tus ensayos, asegúrate de hacerlo con Grammarly. Grammarly es un asistente de escritura.
Here you are.
Can you hear the audio? Okay. Good.
In your high school hallway. You're 16, you just got dumped, you have a test tomorrow, and you're dealing with way too much at home. You've already been told to just say no. You've seen PSAs telling you what your brain will look like on drugs, but you do it anyway. It's a way to escape all the uncomfortable feelings and pressure, a way to numb out. This is how the story begins for some teens. For 9 out of 10 adults who have developed an addiction, it all started before they turned 18. Schools can have a real impact on substance use. They can offer way more than just scare tactics. Substance use isn't a rite of passage, and addiction isn't a moral failing. It's the social environment, it's genetics, it's a developing brain. It's so much more complicated than just a decision to use or not. That's why punishment doesn't prevent teen substance use. Punishment is ineffective. Punishment increases inequities by disproportionately affecting vulnerable youth. It's time to try something different. iDecide empowers teens with scientific knowledge and critical skills to make healthy decisions. iDecide puts students at the center of their own journey. With iDecide, facilitators challenge teens to think critically about their experiences with substance use and the impact substance use has on their lives. The personalized process utilizes intervention tools tailored to each teen and aligns goal setting with individual values. Because one size does not fit all, iDecide's facilitators authentically engage teens, helping them navigate the now so they can have the future they want. It's their brain, it's their future, it's their choice.
All right. So that went through, that took a bunch of my punchlines away, but just so you have an overview of the program, let me tell you a little bit about it. So defining the problem. And I guess let me first kind of back up. So when the Department of Public Health reached out to us to put this program together, what they were looking for was a diversion program, an alternative to punishment, an alternative to exclusionary practices for school-based substance use infractions. We were seeing that the rates of suspensions across the state were rising with regard to substance use. And there are a lot of reasons why traditional punitive responses are likely underserving our kids. So the iDecide at its core, at the impetus of this program was as an alternative to punishment, as a diversion program. I'll get to kind of the details and how this can be utilized in a few slides, but I guess just kind of not bury the lead and say that while we developed this as a diversion program, it is not restricted to be used as a diversion program. So we are encouraging schools to use this as a tier 2 response for any child where substance use may be a potential target. And I'll go into more details about that in a second. So I'm just going to put all the punchlines up here. Oops. All right. So the target problems. So and that we were attempting to address with iDecide. So the first is that early intervention strategies tend to be limited in schools. So, we're talking about that tier 2 space within your multi-tiered system of support. And why is that the case? So, and I'm preaching to the choir, you all know this better than I do, but tier 1 responses, so universal prevention, incredibly important, huge proponent of them. They are relatively easy to know who gets them, right? Because the answer is largely everyone, the whole 9th grade health ed class, or all incoming freshmen. Tier 3 responses, so targeted intervention, is difficult to ignore, right? It's resource intensive, but it's difficult to ignore. You have a kid in crisis, there's an overdose or risk for suicide or intensification of depressive thoughts. We know we need to rally resources around this student, right? Tier 2 is challenging, right? Because tier 2 is early intervention, and it requires us to identify students early in whatever the problem trajectory is that we're trying to intervene upon, and direct resources to that student to try to forestall the need for tier 3 services down the line. And one of the things that we're trying to advocate for, so one is, in all of our conversations with schools, most have said that's where their MTSS is leanest, right, is in that tier 2 space. And one of the things that we're trying to advocate for with iDecide is that at the point of a substance use infraction, right, a kid is caught vaping in the bathroom or drunk at a school dance, whatever it might be, that they are showing us a behavior that may be amenable to support an intervention, right? That this is an opportunity for early intervention rather than needing to wait for multiple infractions or multiple instances to intervene. The second target problem is that punishment doesn't work. Now, there are a lot of reasons why schools in many situations have to use punitive responses for substance use. Maybe there's a safety issue, maybe there have been multiple infractions, maybe it's written in stone in school policy. But the one thing that I really try to impress upon the schools that I work with is that may be the case, but the science doesn't support that that's the most effective strategy. We know that kids who are punished for substance use are no less likely to decrease use. So it's an ineffective deterrent, right? It doesn't deter kids from using. We also know that punishment, right, that kids who are suspended are more likely to increase in substance use, more likely to experience interpersonal violence, more likely to be detached from school and experience academic difficulties. And we could spend all day hypothesizing all of the different pathways by which that happens: reactivity, stigma, unsupervised time. I was working with a kid a few weeks ago who, a few months ago, before the summer, last school year, who was caught dropping acid at school and was suspended for 2 weeks. And I asked him, how it was going, and he said, "Oh, never been higher in my life," right? His parents were away at work and he had unsupervised time. There's difficulty sometimes with reintegration into school. There's missed coursework. All of these different reasons why exclusionary discipline may actually be not just ineffective, but potentially problematic. The third target problem that we are attempting to address with I-Decide is that of addressing resiliency. A lot of programs that are out there tend to focus on risk factors, things that make kids vulnerable. And I'm a psychologist. That's absolutely critical to address. The problem with only addressing risk factors is sometimes they're not malleable. We're born into them in a lot of the situations. We have a family history of addiction. We are in a community with a lot of liquor stores. We had a dispensary open up next door to us. Whatever it might be. Many of the times they're unchangeable. But resiliency is something that can be built over time. So we really wanted this program to be a strength-based program, a way to empower kids and teach them skills and strategies for making decisions that are in line with their core values, things that are most important to them. The fourth piece is that, and you heard this addressed in the video, is that inequities are real and these gaps are not closing. So the major driver, one of the major drivers for the Department of Public Health reaching out to us to develop this program is some really concerning data that came out of our state a few years ago that showed that students of color were 4 times more likely to be punished for school-based substance use infractions than their white peer counterparts, without any differences, and this is a key piece, in the actual reported rates of use at school, right? And there are a lot of different reasons why this might be the case. So we really need to have programs that can serve all, right? And that are scalable across a lot of different types of schools and a lot of different types of communities. And this last piece is probably the most obvious thing I'm going to say today, is that COVID was rough, right? We are in the midst of a youth mental health crisis. You can't open up the New York Times without seeing a feature article on this. It is real and it is dire. And one of the things, as a psychologist, I'm an expert in substance use. That's my bread and butter work. But it is very critical to understand that substance use falls along a mental health continuum in the same way that depression does, that anxiety does, that trauma does, and that we need to be addressing all of these things together. And we have no time to wait, right? With it, and fortunately, unfortunately, schools are poised to represent the prevention arm of our mental health system. This is where kids are, and you all are tasked with doing so much, and being prepared to intervene early is really best suited at school. And that's where we come in, is trying to offer a partnership to help bolster capacity to provide additional programs to try to, in this one small way, help to curb this crisis that's facing our nation. So this program, I won't belabor this. This is our evaluation team. We have a phenomenal advisory board who has been involved in every step along the way. You may see some faces here that you've recognized. John Crocker, who's at Methuen Public Schools and a fierce advocate for school-based mental health. We have the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education on our advisory board. World-renowned scientific experts in implementation science, adolescent mental health, community coalition leaders, and advocates for diversity and inclusion. So really just a fierce team who's been guiding us every step along the way. As I've been alluding to, I decide we are have been very strategic that this is, or very intentional rather, that this is a tier 2 intervention. This is not intended to be delivered as universal prevention. It is not intended to be delivered to everyone. There needs to be some risk for substance use or some exposure to substance use for the material to be relevant. But it is also not a tier 3 program, right? So this is not a cessation program. This is a 4-session intervention for kids who are struggling with addiction. This will not be sufficient, right? This is not, the goal of this program is to not get someone to quit. The goal of this program is to open up a dialogue, to provide education, support, and resources, and to have that dialogue so that if a kid is in need of more intensive support services, that relationship is there and that referral can be made. We're well connected within the Department of Public Health, and if there's any way that we can help navigate those referrals, that's what this partnership is there for as well. To just briefly review our mission statement. So the program aims to provide schools with a scalable, sustainable, effective, and youth-centered program that can be used as a skills-based alternative to punishment, actively working to address inequities and reducing the disproportionate impact of exclusionary practices on Black, Indigenous youth of color. I-Decide can also serve as an early intervention program for students experimenting with substance use. So that's what I meant before, where this is not restricted to be used in an infraction context. If you have a student who's working with a guidance counselor around depression or trauma, and substance use comes up as a potential target, they didn't get in trouble per se. This is a program that that counselor can pull off their shelf and use for that student. Providing youth with science-based knowledge and skills, I-Decide empowers young people to make decisions that align with their core values and future goals to support their own personal well-being. So I want to go very quickly through because the core values, because I think this really speaks to what is at the heart of this program. And we put these values together really before we put pen to paper. And at every step along the way, have made sure that we circle back to these and make sure that if all else fails, that we're adhering true to these values. So the first is that youth are the experts in their own experience. This may sound like an obvious statement, but it's not, right? So one of the things that we are going to be working with facilitators as we train them to deliver this program is that you, the facilitator, may be an expert in education, an expert in mental health, an expert in whatever it may be, but the only person who's the expert in that room is the kid who's sitting across from you, right? Because they're coming in with the wealth of their own experiences, and our job is to provide them with information, but mainly to listen to them and help them to incorporate that information into their own world, right? And we're not pushing towards a specific goal. The goal is to help move them towards a goal that is meaningful to them. And it's not, as we said, as you heard in the video, this is not a one-size-fits-all program. And as you said, as I said here, our goal is to empower and to challenge, but not to instruct, right? We don't want this to be overly didactic. The second core value is that empowerment, strength building, and factual information change behavior more than punishment. Regardless of how you as a district choose to use this program and how it is implemented either instead of punishment, alongside punishment, or as, on a case-by-case basis, that, it is important to know that at the end of the day, that building kids up, fostering resiliency and providing them with facts, just the truth, right? The science is really what's going to be most powerful here. Excuse me. The third value is that long-lasting behavior change is most achievable when goals are aligned with individual core values and fundamental needs. So, and again, this all goes back to this not being a one-size-fits-all program. There's a lot of real estate in this program that is designed to talking to kids about what makes them tick, what are the things that make them feel like they're living a life that's meaningful, and helping them set goals related to substance use, not related to substance use, that are aligned with those values. Because just like anybody else on this planet, we're most likely to stick with behavior change goals when they are egosyntonic, right? Like when they're cohesive with our own self-concept and the things that are important to them. This fourth piece is really important. Cultivating non-judgmental, authentic, reliable relationships with trusted adults at school about substance use is a powerful protective factor. Historically, and not knowing the policy in your district, but historically, school has been a place where substance use tends to be met with punitive responses, right? So the fact that starting to deliver a program where a kid is able to meet with somebody at school and start to establish that relationship with somebody where they can talk openly about substance use is incredibly powerful, right? For them to be able to identify somebody that if they're in trouble, they know they can go to, somebody who's on their side. And when we were, developing this program, we were waffling with a bunch of different models and how we would deliver this. And from a scalability standpoint, the easiest pitch would be that this was an asynchronous program. We put together some flashy computer program that you could, pop a kid in front of a computer, they could press go, navigate their way through the curriculum, check a box and be done. Maybe I'm an old school clinician, but it's just not going to work, right? It is about developing that relationship, having a dialogue, starting a conversation that we really think is the secret sauce here. The content is good. It's all science-based. We worked for years putting this together, but it's just not gonna land without having well-trained facilitators and having somebody at school to deliver that. And this last piece is simple. Every student deserves access. So making sure that we had a program that was scalable and sustainable and spoke to all different types of communities and across all different types of districts. Any questions so far about the overview of the mission of the program, why we developed this? No? Okay, I'm gonna keep going. So a very brief overview of the content, because I know we don't have time to go into the details. I'm happy to show any additional details about any of these modules as you all want to see. But this is the bird's eye view of what we cover in the program. So as I said, it's 4 sessions. We provide all of the training to facilitators. I should mention, the program is free, the training is free, there are no costs to the district to using the program. This is, as I said, it's funded by the Department of Public Health, and that's what we're funded to do, is to support you all in implementing this program and to evaluate the program. Facilitators do not need to be clinically trained. So we felt very strongly that mental health staff in schools are at a premium right now and are stretched very thin. So if it is the wishes of the school that we wanted a program that you could mobilize anyone, whether it be the chemistry teacher or somebody from the community or the school history teacher, whoever. So we'll train anybody and get them up to speed. The program is available on day 1, is available in English and Spanish. We are almost done with our Portuguese translations as well. If you need additional languages, let us know and we will work to make sure that those are available for you. The 4 modules. So module 1 covers teen brain development, the neurobiology of addiction, industry tactics, and risk and protective factors. So this is a lot of science. So why is, excuse me, talking about substance use when you're 15 a fundamentally different question than talking about substance use when you're 45, right? It's not that one is without risk, but it is just we're on different playing fields. And that is because of brain development. It's not because I'm a square adult who likes to tell kids what to do. No, it's because of the way that that kids' brains are developing that makes that period between ages 12 and about 24 incredibly vulnerable to introduce substances. And we want to make sure that students know that, right? That we're showing them the science. stripped of all of the flash, right? Just the facts, showing them the numbers, helping them understand that this is a science-based discussion, right? What happens when your brain is addicted? What happens in your brain and in your body? And making sure that we build basic media literacy skills in students as well. We are not the only ones who know that adolescents are vulnerable to addiction. Industry knows that, right? It's why Juul is now going to be banned, right? It's because they use strategies stripped from big tobacco 50 years ago to try to hook an entire generation on vaped nicotine, right? To make these products cool and sexy and appealing to youth, right? And helping build strategies to detect those techniques in industry. And then lastly, ending with risk and protective factors. So what are the things that make you vulnerable? As I said, we have to acknowledge the risk factors, but also what are the things that make you strong? What are the things that make you resilient? And starting to come up with a plan for how to cultivate those and build those over time. Because a lot of times risk factors are static, but resilience factors are dynamic. Module 2 covers motives for use and specific drug effects. So the specific drug effects, I'll talk about that first, is, and I should have said this at the beginning, one of the things that's really cool about this program is this is a drug agnostic program, meaning that there are a lot of vaping diversion programs out there or marijuana diversion programs out there. This is not that. This is designed to support students who are experimenting with any form of substance. And groups can be mixed. So if you have a group of a kid who is caught vaping nicotine, one who's using marijuana, one who's drinking alcohol, one who's using some combination of the two, they can all be in the same program because the content is exactly the same. And the reason for that, there are a lot of reasons of why we did that. One is to make it more scalable for schools, right? So you're not having to match groups based off of what kids are presenting with. Two is if we're talking about within an infraction context, what we catch a kid using may or may not be what's causing the most problems in their life. So we want to give them the opportunity to address really what's at the root here. And the third piece is, in order for this to truly be a tier 2 program, so an early intervention approach, we need to address things that we know kids are at risk for being exposed to. So if you catch a kid who is vaping in the bathroom, just by virtue of seeing that behavior, we know that student is at increased risk for at least being exposed to alcohol, marijuana, opioids, other substances, even if they're not experimenting with it. So we want to provide them with the psychoeducation at that point in time. Again, we saw a behavior, the early detection happened, providing them with targeted information to help reduce that risk and reduce the need for further services down the line. So they'll receive psychoed around marijuana, alcohol, nicotine, vaping as a method for use, opioids, hallucinogens, sedatives, you name it, they receive. We have some nice videos that cover the effects of those substances on the brain and body. We also go through motives for use. So what do I mean by this? We have students think through what are the things that they really like about using? What are the things that would be really hard about kicking their, giving up their vape, right? And for some people that may feel like a very counterintuitive conversation to have with kids, but it's not, right? Because first of all, it tends to take some people back first, right? So the shock helps a little bit, but also it helps us get at why they're using, right? So if I'm vaping because, it is the only way to help me pay attention in class. I have ADHD and it's the only way for me to quiet my mind so I can sit through class. As a facilitator, I sure better know that, right? Because if I'm trying to challenge this kid to reduce their nicotine use, I need to understand what's going to be laying at the surface when that behavior goes away, because that's going to be what trips them up down the line. If I'm, smoking marijuana because that's the only thing that keeps me from wanting to hurt myself at night, I sure as hell better know that as a facilitator, because we need to start identifying strategies for managing those underlying fundamental needs that are trying to be addressed through the substance use. But we also flip that coin on over and say, okay, so those are the reasons why you like using, and these are the things that would be hard about giving it up. But what are the things that might be pretty good about quitting or not using? What are the things you actually don't like about using, right? And having the student generate themselves, what are the drawbacks? Because it's a lot more powerful coming from them than it is certainly is coming from me. You know, I really don't like using because I don't like having to hide it from my mom. I don't like using because, you know, kind of an expensive habit, and there are other things I'd rather be using that money for. And I'm working on, you know, a job after school. I work hard for that money, whatever it might be. But starting that for them to think critically about the drawbacks of this behavior. Module 3 covers identifying triggers, healthy alternatives, effective communication strategies, mindfulness, and meditation. So what are the things that in the moment may increase the chance that you want to pick up a vape or that you want to use marijuana? And what are reasonable, realistic, healthy things that you can be doing to manage those cravings in those moments? So having them think about what are the real barriers that are going to dictate what types of strategies are realistic. How much money do they usually have in their pocket? Who do they walk home with after school? Who's at home when they go home? And having them come up with strategies given different types of constraints. We go through effective communication strategies, so how to advocate for yourself in a way that feels genuine and authentic, and also going through mindfulness and meditation as another strategy for managing those cravings in the moment. The last module is core values and setting goals. So what are the things that make you feel like you're living a life that's meaningful? And teaching them how to set goals. We use this SMART B framework across a variety of different dimensions of wellness, whether that's emotional wellness, educational wellness, community wellness, spiritual wellness, physical wellness, and setting goals using this specific framework that align with those values. And then it's the last activity of the program, very, very last activity, where we say, okay, given everything that you've learned, let's set one goal with your substance use, just one, right? For most kids, given that this is a 4-session program, it's not going to be, I never want to use again. That's okay, right? This is a harm reduction program, but maybe it's, okay, I've been smoking weed before I come to school every day. Maybe I'm going to try to go to school without smoking, and I'm going to save that for an after school activity. Or I'm going to go from using 5 days a week to 3 days a week. Or when I go to a party, I'm going to make sure that I have a sober ride home. Whatever it might be, it's about starting to develop autonomy over their substance use behavior and setting a goal with an adult at school who can check in on them and to help troubleshoot if things don't go as well as they want to. So I want to pause there for a second. There are a whole lot more things that I can talk about the program itself, and I do want to talk to you about the evaluation, how we're going to be evaluating the program, but I want to pull the screen down just for a second and see what questions you have about the curriculum, how we're envisioning it being implemented, what's involved in training, anything along those lines. I want to be able to answer that, and then I'm happy to switch gears and talk about the data collection activities. Excuse me.
My questions, and I don't know if they're for you or for the school district, are what you just alluded to. Like, so it's in-house school personnel that will be trained in this program and providing these modules to students, correct?
So mostly, yes. So we are leaving it up to each school to decide. We have 103 schools. We have 103 different models and how this is being implemented. So I would say the majority of the schools that we're working with are deploying their own staff to be trained. We'll train as many people as you want. So I have one school coming to a training in a few weeks who are sending 20 people to get trained. I have one school that's sending 2 people. I have other schools who have tight connections with their local substance use coalitions or community agencies and are deploying people in the community to come in and deliver the program. Either's fine with us. Whether it's delivered in school or out of school is also can vary school to school.
So what are
Randy,
we?
can I, I'll just interrupt. So it's, when we originally began our educational version, we were working with essentially like 5 different stakeholders within the school community, school nurses, school counselors, our athletic director, when applicable, the SRO, so Officer Sanders, and myself, in our health teachers, right? So like there were a lot of stakeholders involved in that. At this point, we've drilled down and brought it back to the nurses and the school council, the school counseling staff, in terms of our initial folks that we work with as facilitators, including myself. And that's pretty much, Randy, right, in line with other schools and what they're.
That's the typical model. The typical model is a school mental health team, whether that's guidance counselors, school social workers, school psychologists, and nurses. Those are the most typical people that we're seeing at our trainings. Doesn't have to be though. And that can change over time as well. As I said, the trainings, we'll be offering trainings every 2 months and new people can join.
Mike.
Yeah, I can read your mind. So they didn't get to this part yet. There's so many, as you can imagine, 103 districts, 103 schools, excuse me. So it takes a rollout kind of plan. So they're in their first year of training, right?
Yep.
Well, so it's all on a, essentially almost, I would call it like a lottery, right? Caroline, I'm waiting for us. That's not a plug, but it's just like, it's, in the meantime, what we've been fortunate enough to be able to do is like someone like Caroline, she would come out to a school if we had a case where we had a family and they implemented.
So from a rollout perspective, our start date right now is undetermined. Is that fair?
The start date for the implementation of the program. So maybe this is a good point for me to talk about how the evaluation, because this all ties together. So what we launched in January 2022 was what we're calling our early access program. I have slides. If it's okay, I'm just going to kind of talk through this. What we're calling our early access program, which is our pilot, right? Our pilot of 10, aka 103 schools. And the way that we are going to be evaluating the program, because that's part of what DPH has tasked us to do, is that in order for us to take this back to DESE, we need a strong evidence base for the program, is that we would be, the schools who are participating in our pilot are doing side-by-side evaluation and early implementation. The only schools who will have access to this program between now and June 2024 are those who are participating in this early access, this pilot trial, okay? So what that means is that schools will be randomly phased in every 2 months to be trained in the program. So we have one training coming up in next week, and then every 2 months we'll be onboarding a new set of about 10 to 15 schools. So yes, it is undetermined the date at which the district will be trained, but we have launched the data collection protocol, which is what Mike was mentioning, where if there's a referral, if there's an infraction at the school, we will come out and meet with the student, do a full psychodiagnostic assessment and assessment for their substance use. Obviously, with written parental consent, we're not meeting with these students if we don't have written parental consent to do that, but are able to evaluate substance use, mental health, other risk factors, help navigate referrals if that's clinically indicated.
So the data collection is a student in the school that has violated a substance abuse issue, that now you've been notified from the school, you get permission from the parents, and your team comes out to start the data collection.
Yes, so there are, let me pull this up. So you can see there are 3 levels to our data collection plan. Can everyone see this okay? Okay, so 3 levels of data collection that are involved in this early access, the pilot trial. So the first, straightforward, is what we're calling school stakeholder interviews. So what happens here is, in order for us to feel confident that we have a scalable program across a variety of different communities is that we are going to be asking each school, when they are notified that they will be trained, to nominate 3 to 5 individuals within their school or district to do these interviews with our team. It's a confidential interview. We can do it by Zoom, our interview, and we'll schedule it at your convenience. We do those interviews right before the school is trained so that we can learn about what are the barriers and facilitators to launching new programs in that particular district. What are the ins and outs of that district's school substance use policy? And then 6 months after you gain the program, what are the things you like about the program? What are the things that you wish that were in that program? We think this will be a living and breathing program and want to make sure that we can incorporate all that feedback from people on the ground at school into version 2, 3, 4, and so on. The third piece is our school-wide assessment. So that's beginning this fall. So all schools who are part of this pilot trial are doing this annual school survey, which is, excuse me, I'm so sorry. It's an online anonymized survey, should take about 15 to 20 minutes to do. It's a school-wide survey, so this is not restricted to kids who are caught using substances at school. This helps us really understand the backdrop by which the kids are coming from, the school culture, prevalence of substance use at the school, prevalence of other risk factors and protective factors, and for us to also be able to give data back to the school. So all of the data that we collect at an aggregate level, we can share directly back with you all. We firmly believe in the benefit of data-driven intervention development. So for you to be able to see from a data standpoint, really where programming might need to be, excuse me, deployed. This is really a state-of-the-art survey where we have very robust instruments that will be incorporated throughout. And this is, as I said, going to be deployed in all of the schools who are participating in the pilot trial. So will give us also a very unique perspective and give you all very unique perspective about how this school is faring compared to other schools and help make decisions again about programming from a data standpoint. The third piece, which is what I referred to, or what we were talking about earlier, which is the student referrals. So this is really critical. And this is where we've already been able to meet with students in the district. So when there's an infraction at school, when a kid is caught vaping in the bathroom, for example, we will receive a referral and be able to reach out, we're staffed to be able to reach out to every student within 24 hours. We'll reach out to the student's family and tell them about our 3-session research protocol that we're offering. And again, you do not need to wait for the school to be trained in I Decide. This has already begun. This began in January in all of the schools that we're working with. And as I said, this is, we'll meet with parents, tell them about the program. If they have no interest in our 3 sessions, no problem. They'll never hear from us again. If they're interested, we'll send a consent form and we'll require written parental consent before we even meet with the student. At that point in time, we'll do a full diagnostic interview, an assessment of their substance use, other risk factors, and we'll meet with them at baseline. So around the point in time of the infraction, 45 and roughly 90 days later. And it's through these 3 different pieces of data that we'll be able to triangulate around the effectiveness of the program and areas for improvement. Our goal is that come summer 2024, we're going to be able to open this up to every school across the state, as well as potentially schools. We had a school reach out to us from Colorado a few days ago, so to schools outside of Massachusetts as well. But have committed to the schools in our early access program that we are going to be developing it, fine-tuning it with their voices for the next roughly 18 months or so. So I'm sure there are several questions about this. I'm going to pull my screen down so that we can address and talk together. Excuse me.
I have a question, I guess, for Mike and gang. So you know, I know we have problems with school districts, vaping, other probably substance abuse. So this survey being anonymous, if we're trying to, you know, gain data and trying to help the school as a whole, if we're not identifying those that are either A, at risk, B, you know, are really kind of looking for some sort of outlet, you don't know who they are. This is kind of like a data collection to kind of, you know, add a combination to other districts and then say, okay, Southwick has 11% of the population vaping, you know, 10% are using alcohol. If we don't know who these kids are, and I'm not saying like I want to violate any sort of privacy law, acts, or anything like that, but
Why are we making it anonymous?
right.
Is your
So, well, yes and no. So again, not using discipline, and but we have a policy to discipline, like previously mentioned. You know, how are we going to implement the change without knowing who these people are?
And Randy, I'm just gonna speak like. A petitioner's kind of standpoint, you know, educator here, put that hat on for a second. I get your question. I mean, that is.
Like, I wanna help,
right.
truly help, like, let's just
I
say,
get
you know, I wanna help.
Joe. So like, if we know, I'm just gonna use a really like drastic high number, all right? But like, let's say, 1 out of 5 students, you know, like 20%, let's even go 1 out of 4, 25% of our students say they've used a vape, right? They've used a vape or been around someone that's vaped, right? So in that way, at least at like a programming standpoint, we would know, in like a curricular kind of standpoint, all right, well, maybe in health class, we have to bolster and increase, and I'm using these as like,
I get it.
you know, total like picking this up like theoretically, but we would improve, you know, our curricular delivery around vaping, if we see the need, right? But like your question around how do we support that individual student, I mean, I can only use, you know, my the relationships that I build, that our students build with our staff around knowing the kids that struggle with that, and then be able to provide those supports. And that does happen. It happens like every day. Right. So like that's the way. It's not. So
kind of like, you know, we've all, you know, I'm 50, so I grew up on this is your brain on deck, you know, from the band. So I get the reference there.
Yep.
However, as a child who has a rare lung disease, who's a patient of Boston Children's, granulomatous lung disease is much like cystic fibrosis. However, it's really incurable, and his interior lining of his lungs are calcified, and he's Remicade dependent. He goes for infusions twice a month at Boston Children's. And I could tell you, speaking to pulmonology at Boston Children's, that secondhand vape is worse than secondhand smoke. I mean, smoking in bars and restaurants in Mass and various other states have been banned. And obviously, people think that a vapor is okay, it dissipates, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's not true. You know, irreversible popcorn lung. So I don't know if in your program, additionally, with the okay, little Timmy, you're a vapor. Do you understand what you're doing not only to your lung that, you know, is irreversible, but you're also doing to the people, you know, in the bathroom with you or in your car, or, you know, there's a lot beyond identifying. So, I mean, there's a lot to this, and I'm actually all for this. I did a lot of research on your program, and I applaud you all. I really think it's a great way to, you know, create an avenue to help these kids. I have a harder time with it being anonymous. I get it. There are privacy laws and this, that, and the other. But if a kid raises his hand and said, I want you to know who I am, do we allow that? Will we allow that? If
Look-
somebody, you know,
Can I jump in about the anonymized? So first of all, I absolutely appreciate the question, and I think you and I are of the same mindset. And I would love to, in an ideal world, I would want this survey to be a point of intervention, right? In reality, so the survey component of our evaluation protocol is not like an expert screening, which is identified and right, so the screening happens, a brief intervention can be deployed, we can make some treatment decisions or some service delivery decisions at that point. That's not the goal of this particular survey. The goal of this survey, and one of the, the hill that I'll die on is really about really trying to take substance use out of a silo and trying to understand how that fits in within the context of a variety of other psychosocial risk factors. So while the survey is anonymous for that person, so yes, we get the survey data back, and I don't know whether that is filled in by John Smith or Mary Jane. It's just it is anonymized, but it will help us understand that if a kid is vaping nicotine at this level, they are X% more likely to experience symptoms of depression or experience symptoms of anxiety or be disconnected from mental health treatment, right? To help us understand how that fits within the other potential targets that we may need to be addressing, deploying services to. And I think one of the ways that we have misstepped in the past is that we have been addressing mental health and we've been addressing substance use, right? But the problem is a lot of these mental health risk factors underlie the motivations for using. So for us to actually identify that and for us to say, okay, if we are doing a 9th grade universal prevention program in our health ed classes, right? It may not be enough. We know that in our students, kids who are vaping are 4 times more likely to experience symptoms of depression. I'm just making that number up. That's not a real number. That universal prevention program probably should be incorporating some mental health promotion work into it, right? So it's really going to help us from a data-driven standpoint, take a step back from the programming and figure out what additional targets need to be incorporated and for us to be able to monitor change over time. So our hope is that by having access to restorative programs like this, that over time, we see movement in some of these targets. And if we don't, we need to pivot, right? And that's okay, but we can't, again, from a science standpoint, I don't want to shoot in the dark, right? I want us to have the numbers, for us to have the data, and not hypothetical data from the kids that we're actually trying to serve to make a decision about, okay, it's moving, marijuana use has decreased, but vaping hasn't changed, or alcohol use has actually increased, right? And start to actually, on a year-by-year basis, be able to look at these data objectively and make decisions that are in the best interests of the kids. That makes sense. Yeah, please.
So I totally understand the purpose of the survey. I get its importance to your research, to your developmental program, which you're then training us on, as well as at the educational level to the development of school programs. Totally get it. So my question to you as a researcher, who's gathering data for this, we were speaking earlier about the difference in the kind of data that you receive when a survey is either an opt-in or an opt-out survey. And I think if you have personal experience on this, to speak on that topic for us.
Oh, how much time do we have? I got lots of time for that. We are a strong proponent for opt-out surveys, meaning that we notify parents and guardians with ample time in multiple different ways and give them the opportunity to withdraw from the survey if that is their preference, without punishment, without any sort of consequence. Give them full visibility into what's involved in the survey, give them a link to the survey so they can see the questions that they want to that we're going to ask, but let them opt out. What we have found is that the representativeness of a survey sample from opt-in versus opt-out is vastly different. So we've been doing a survey like this since 2016. And we, on average, are able to survey through an opt-out method. We've always done opt-out. Has been anywhere from, on our low end, 70% of the school, on a high end, 98% of the school. We are able to speak about students in this school, right? It is the denominator are students enrolled, right? It's a representative sample. For an opt-in survey, right, where parents or guardians have to go out of their way to opt into the survey, you get a much less representative sample, which makes the data a lot less useful, a lot less actionable, a lot less informative. I would say on average, you can expect anywhere from 8 to about 25% of parents to opt into a survey when you require, again, the opt-in process. So again, it's from my standpoint, from a science standpoint, the juice becomes not worth the squeeze, right? Because you start to wonder, who are the kids that you're surveying, right? Is there a bias involved in that sample, right? What does it say about those kids? And because it's anonymous, that's an unanswerable question. And I worry about starting to make determinations around a sample that may not actually generalize to the student body that you're trying to serve.
Well, how many questions are there, and how many of those questions are we particularly given to a certain school? In other words, geography or whatever, like, does Southwood maybe get, a random, like, who picks the questions that we get from the survey?
Yeah, you cut out a little bit at the end. So I think I heard, how many questions are there? And is it?
What questions, right, are chosen for each?
Yeah, same questions for every school. So we want to make sure, so it's the same questions for every school. The only difference is school to school is middle school versus high school. So there are some questions for 6th through 8th graders that are not shown to the younger students. But the core survey is exactly the same, whether it's Southwick or Chelsea or Revere or Newburyport or Medford. It's exactly the same. And I think that's what's going to make this really powerful. There are the exact number of questions. It's actually kind of a little bit of a tricky question to answer because there's a lot of branching logic. So for example, if somebody says, there's a question, how many times in your life have you used marijuana? If the answer is 0, then they don't get any of the questions about how many times they've used in the last 30 days, or questions about withdrawal or possible addiction. So there's a lot of questions that are embedded throughout. That makes sense. I can pull the survey up also if folks want to look at it together.
Respect to the survey, Dr. Schuster, has there been some adjustments on that link over the last week or so? Because last week when I was pulling that up, part of the concern I've got is that in your letter that you sent out to the parents, the phrase that you used is, if you want to see an example of the type of questions that may appear in the survey, please click this link.
Yep.
That doesn't really sound very definitive on whether the questions that you've got in there are going to actually be the questions. You send the letter out to the parents to say, if you want to see what the questions are, click the link. But they may be examples, and they may or may not even be in the survey.
Yep.
I looked at this last week. There is 17 questions on there pertaining to specific discrimination questions.
Yep.
Last week, they were up there on page 9 and there was no disclaimer. Now, when the only way that they actually are shown is if you click on the survey and indicate that you're a student in high school, then they show up.
Yep.
So one of the concerns I've got is, if we're going to send this out and we're going to do it as an opt-in, if the parents are going to be able to see the survey question, they should be able to see all the survey questions. Now, when Amy sent us copies of what the survey was, and we've got sample all over it, this was, if I'm assuming you saw these, this is a completely branched out survey where it shows all the options, no matter what it is. Why is that not included in the link And why are we making changes at this point if all the survey questions are the same everywhere?
Yeah, good questions. And I appreciate that. So a few different questions in there and let me answer. Let me
Yes.
know if I missed any of these.
Yeah.
My husband's a lawyer and tells me to put may in there because there are no substantive changes in the questions. Things that have changed have been exactly what you picked up on. The discrimination items are only appropriate for high school students. The word, if you read the questions, which I'm sure you did, they just don't make sense for a middle school student. So that was something where, as we've reviewed this before it's gone live, we've realized that should be branched off of grade, right? So we wanted to make sure that the survey link that was available is going to be how students are actually going to navigate through the survey. So we put the may in there just to allow us to continue to fine tune and edit it. There have been no substantive changes. There will be no substantive changes in the content of the survey itself. Now, with that said, if you would prefer to send out the PDF of the fully laid out survey, totally fine. That's absolutely fine for us to do that. The reason why we thought parents would prefer to see it in the link is not to try to hide anything, but it's really so that they could see that if a kid says that they've never used marijuana, they're not going to get all of these other questions. Just felt like it was a more user-friendly way to navigate through. The other reason is we are going to have the survey available in 17 different languages. So we wanted parents to see how, rather than sending out 17 different PDFs of all the different translations, it was just easier to toggle between the two.
Yeah, and I certainly get that. I guess the problem is that we've sent this letter out 2 weeks ago now.
Mhm.
Parents, when they go on, if they went onto that link 2 weeks ago, see a very different thing than if they go onto the link today. And if they get a printout that's got all the breakdowns, they see a very different set of questions. Like, I didn't even realize that the questions would be different if you clicked on a different answer. In your letter, it doesn't indicate that. It doesn't even refer to that depending on the answers that you give, the questions will branch out and there'll be very different, more detailed questions. I think it's fine and it makes sense from a disclosure perspective. The challenge I've got is that there are, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, there are some extremely sensitive questions that you're asking these students in this survey. If you want parents' approval and you want to get them on board with this and you don't want them to opt out, I think the least that we could be doing is providing them with all the questions and the branches that they may be asked in order for them to make an informed decision as to whether they want their child to participate with this. Sending out a link that doesn't have all the answers and sending out a link that's changed within the last 7 days without notifying anybody is giving them, it depends on when the parents go in. They may not even know that if you click on this, it's going to show you different answers. So one parent may see this and go, oh, well, I don't have any problem with these questions. But if they see some of the branched out questions, they might have an issue, but they wouldn't know. So therefore, they wouldn't opt out. And now their child is going to be exposed to questions that if they were given prior information and were shown ahead of time, they may have child out.
Yeah, I see that. I see and certainly we can put a disclaimer at the beginning that says, click through to see different permutations of the question. There is nothing that has been removed or added since it's been sent out. But fair point about, we can certainly put some language at the beginning, and that's very easy for us to do, that says toggle through so you can see.
You can't just put the whole branched out version on there. I mean, that would show every question that's available.
PDF, right? Like
Yeah, just include, put a link to the PDF that we've got.
And absolutely is totally fine to send out the PDF. That is absolutely okay to do. We can replace the link with the PDF. We can send it out in addition to. And again, the reason for sending the link was we actually got feedback from parents in prior years where we sent out the PDF that said, why are you asking all these questions about alcohol use? My kid doesn't drink, right? So we wanted to make it really clear that they're only getting one question, right? I've had a lot of parents say, the more questions you're asking, that feels more sensitive. We don't want to keep belaboring the point. This doesn't seem to make sense. So we wanted to show them exactly how they will go through it. But point very well taken that even maybe showing both or putting some comments in the beginning that says there is branching logic in here to click around. I have no problem with that whatsoever.
You could even put something, look, here's the way it's set up. If you click on different answers, if you would like to see the full branch version, click on this for a PDF. That way they've got the ability to do it.
We can even probably put that in the link itself so that there's a PDF that they can download. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I
So
think
based
that's
on
very
that,
good.
this week of October 24th for the projected survey date.
Yep.
With this adjustment and with these different issues with this link, is that date set in stone? Because now at this point, we're at September the 20th. We may have a number of parents that said, oh, I'm fine with this, but they may not know, they don't know what all the questions are. Is there an ability to reset that link where we can push that date back to give everybody a proper time frame in order to do this?
100%, not a problem on our end. So this is the whatever date, we are just asking that for schools who, for the surveys that are being done, that they are done before Thanksgiving. So if we want to push the survey date back and we want to distribute the letter again, not a problem on our end at all.
Is there a minimum number of surveys that the district has to get in order for them to be able to qualify for this program?
No, of course not. Not at all.
Because the other item that we are discussing is in our policy, if this was a survey that was funded by the U.S. Department of Education, we would be to have an opt-in survey.
Yep.
So one of the questions on the table is, because of the sensitive nature of these questions, should this be opt-in? If we decide as a district to go down that route, does that preclude the district from being able to participate in this program?
It would be a discussion point. It would be something that we would need to talk about with the team. In part because of the conversation that we were having before about the generalizability of an opt-in versus an opt-out survey.
I understand that, and I get the difference of doing it. But from my perspective, if we're going to do this and we're going to do it opt-out,
yep,
then we need to make sure that we are providing the parents with the transparency of what this survey actually is going to look like, and not have it where the only way they get to see the things if they click the right buttons.
Rob, I don't mean to stop you, but I think that's something we can talk about as a committee.
Right, but they're going to have to be the ones that do that.
Right.
But to be the voice of the opposite of what you just said,
Yeah.
we've received complaints in the past from parents when we've sent all these questions out and they said, why, when my kid said, I've never smoked marijuana, are you continuing to ask all these
Right, quick
questions? So
elaboration.
we've received
Right.
the opposite complaint of what you're saying that you want to see. So just to be like the devil's, see
No,
both
but Dr.
sides of
Schuster
it.
indicated that there's a way to be able to do, look, you can look at the survey, and if you would like to see all the questions, that way if somebody wants to, they can. I just want to make sure that they've got the ability to see all these if they want it. If they don't, that's fine.
Yep.
But it just seems unfair to ask them to make a decision as to whether their child's going to participate if they don't necessarily get a chance to evaluate the entire survey.
Our only rate limiting step, just again, full disclosure, is that sentence that says, there is branching logic in the survey. If you want to see the full survey, please click here to download the PDF. Our only rate limiting step is getting that few sentences translated into 17 different languages, because we want to make sure that's accessible across all the different links. I'm happy to do that if that's what the committee wants. It is not a problem on our end. And as long as usually we can get that back within about 2 weeks, we can update the link with that sentence and pop a link to the PDF. That's really not a problem for us at all. There's, like I said, there's nothing different in content with the PDF versus the link. It's just the branching logic. And I think your point is very well taken, that there may be a parent who wants to see it fully splayed out, and we can provide that without a problem.
You wouldn't have to do 17 different links, right? For 17 different languages.
No, it's all one link. So when you click on the one link, you'll see there'll be bubbles that they can toggle between the different languages. But anything that is in the English version, we need to make available in every other language that we have. So any new additions to the survey just costs us a little bit of money and a little bit of time to get that translated, but it's not a problem to do that. But no, one link, 17 languages.
Identify here, well, say 3 or 4 languages we need right
We
now.
already did
That's
that
true.
with
Yeah,
the.
so that's,
So-
I think we're good then. We don't
Right,
need
it
to
wouldn't have
set-
to be all the languages. I'm sure you have a,
Yep, we already worked with our ELL.
Yep.
so-
Teacher.
And whatever we would do, and this is part of been the benefit of working with so many different schools. Whatever we will do for you, we will do for every other school that we're working with. So I think this is a great suggestion. And if you want to move forward with it, we'll do it and we'll propagate it. We will, even if you only need 4 languages and Chelsea needs a different language and Newburyport needs a different languages, we're just going to go ahead and do it for all of them, and we'll, which will, again, that'll be the only thing that'll cost us a little bit of time, but nothing that I think would make a big difference on your end.
So Randy, just in full transparency, the next round of letters that would go out, because for this to be correct done in the best practice model, we send out 2 rounds of letters, communication. With 2 different formats. So like one of those formats is posted on our school website on the main homepage. And the second was we sent out a mass email message, like a mailing.
Yep.
A couple weeks ago at this point. So when we do the second one, would that be enough? We would met our 2 for that, whatever date we come up with, and we gotta discuss that at a school level and with you. Mid-November or wherever, but before November break.
Mike, remind me, ballpark, when are you scheduled to send out that second round of communications?
It would be within a couple days.
Couple days. So I would say the only thing that we should, so there's no, if we push that second round, again, if you want to move forward and you definitely want that sentence included, we should push that second mailing out until we can get those translations in, because I won't put that link up only in English. I want to make sure that this is accessible across all language needs. So if we pushed that second distribution until we had, again, if you wanted that link, that sentence up until when we got that back and could modify the link accordingly.
That works great. That's exactly what we want to do, right? I think that's,
Well, what's the timeline?
I mean, you're probably thinking,
We'll reach out to
Yeah.
our translation services tomorrow morning. Caroline, I would say probably 2 weeks.
They can typically get these things back, the smaller changes, in about like 9 to 11 business days.
we'll still be in line.
Yeah.
That will work. Timeline wise, we will be A-okay.
I just don't want to miss it.
We will not be able to make the window of the end of October, but we can push it out. And we can make that clear in our communication in the second letter. There has been a change of implementation date.
And Mike, you might still meet the end of October. We might still be okay, because we could push, I mean, and we can see how long it takes for Erickson to get us back those translations. The only thing that our institutional review board requires are a few things. There are a lot of things they require, but 2 forms of communication, 2 different times, at least 2 weeks apart, starting at least a month before the survey. So if that second email goes out 2 weeks, as long as we get that out by the end of the first week in October, we might still be okay. Again, if you want to push it, I have no problem with that whatsoever, but that's an easy change on our end, just to change the date in the letter, if that's what you want.
Thank you.
Last question I've got is, how are you, and I'm assuming you're going to grab on this, how are you going to assess success with this program? If you're only identifying and working with kids that have violated a policy,
Mhm.
it's going to look at, we've dealt with 10 kids this year, and in 2 years we've dealt with 5, so therefore there's a 100% improvement? Or are you going to, like we've talked about, if kids out there that, if they know that this program is available and they want to participate in it because, let's say they haven't been caught, but they're using,
Yep.
There's no judgment, no penalty. If they want to participate in this program, I'm assuming that's not, you're not set up for that kind of participation, right?
We are.
Oh.
So, and we want you using it that way. We really want, we put a lot of work into this program. It's good. Use it, you know? And so just because-
Identifying this for using it with people that have been caught.
No. So we want you using this as a tier 2 support program. So this can be used for kids who have an infraction, right? They got caught. There's some question about appropriate response, whether that's discipline, not discipline, and kids who may be experimenting with substances, either they self-referred in, a parent referred in, they have a buddy who's going through the program, or it came up as a potential target in other sort of mental health supports at school. Absolutely. Now, where we are, my team is doing that 3-session research protocol, we are only evaluating the program as an alternative to suspension. So for kids who have an infraction, that does not mean you as a school district can't use it for other students. We absolutely want you to. How we're going to be evaluating the program is going to be also not specific to Southwick, right? So we are going to be looking at change in student behavior from baseline, so the point of that index infraction, 45 and 90 days later, before schools have access to a program like this, and then afterwards. And really what we're looking at are 2 primary outcome variables, are change in actual substance use behavior, so change in self-reported rate and frequency of cannabis use, alcohol use, tobacco use, whatever their primary substance is, as well as knowledge of drug effects, which we know is a major proxy and protective factor against escalation. So how much do they know about the risks of using a variety of different substances and their intention to make changes down the line? And that is going to be looked at. So as you mentioned, you know, within a district, there may only be, you know, only 10 infractions. But when we're looking at this across 100 schools, we have a much bigger pool of people to look at that change in the pre to post, excuse me, pre to post period.
If a student comes to someone at the school, I need help, who are you referring them to? Where does it go beyond the school? Where are they going for the substance abuse help? Is it this trained facilitator, or are you referring them to medical professionals who are trained substance abuse counselors? What's that step?
So if the school wants to provide, I decide for that student, right? The school would refer them to the trained facilitator in-house, right? So there will be 1 to 20 people at the school, however many you want to train, 1 to 100 people, however many, who will be equipped to deliver the program, either one-on-one or in a group setting to that student. If the school, after going through that program or through some other pathway, deems that the student is in need of more intensive support services, reach out to us, call us, and we will, you know, connect with our clinical services at MGH, connect with the statewide ACRA network that's funded by the Department of Public Health, and help to facilitate those referrals as needed. But the delivery of the curriculum itself is by school-based trained facilitators or community folks that the school is allowing to come in and to deliver to students. Does that make sense?
So if you've got a minor that comes up and self-identifies that they need help, is there a process to notify parents?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
100%.
I just want to make sure.
We have
I mean, it's,
Yeah.
if we don't ask the question,
Yeah.
we
Good
go
question,
through
but
this.
yeah,
I mean,
100%.
if they're gonna come forward, I mean, the school's not gonna penalize them, and they've made the step
Yep.
to say, I need some help.
Yep.
The number 1 thing should be notifying the parents that, hey, we've got this program, they've come forward.
Yep.
We just need to be aware of it.
Yeah.
And there is a process. We have a suggested, excuse me, contract, for lack of a better word, that schools can use at the outset of the program to kind of openly discuss with parents what does confidentiality look like, what are going to be the limits, and navigate that as as a team to figure out exactly what that looks like. But yeah, absolutely. And I will say, the delivery of the program itself, we're there to support. We can give you our advice, probably unsolicited advice on what we think is the best way to deliver the program. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the way that you as a district decide to implement the program and the confines around that in terms of how parents are notified, if parents are notified, how that happens, whether that's written or verbal or whatever, is per school substance use policy. It's per your policy. And so every school is going to have slightly different ways that they're navigating that. And we're here to support you implementing that per what works for your district. Does that make sense? The evaluation piece, the data collection piece, that's kind of our domain. That's our consent process. And that's something that falls under the purview of our institutional review board. But your implementation of the program and how you are delivering a curriculum, the intervention to your students, you guys are the experts there. And we'll work with whatever policy you have in place.
How quickly after the survey is taken will we get the pie chart?
Oh, excellent question. I love data questions. So we are setting up the scaffolding now to hopefully be able to get that back to you. I'm hoping for early 2023. So January, February 2023. And we will give you back as much data as you want. So our hope is to put together a nice report for you so that you see all of the data that you have. And what we'll be able to get back to you very quickly will be the Southwick data. What I'm hoping we will be able to get to you by the end of the school year is the Southwick data and the state report. So that way we can start looking at what does this district look like relevant to other districts. Now, just to rest assured, that doesn't mean Medford is another district that we're working with. They're not getting Southwick specific data, right? So what I want to give you guys is Southwick and then an aggregate state report. What Medford is going to get is going to get their Medford data and an aggregate state report, right? So just.
Oh, I'm kind of curious, like, I'll just use, Boston as a reference, the difference between gale force and hurricane wind. So like, if a red flag is, evident after this survey, I think that, let's just say more kids have taken the survey and we find to be using that we didn't know. I think, a 6-week, 8-week timeline is kind of a long time to get the data back because could be implementing some sort of program or session sooner than later.
Yeah.
That's why I get nervous.
Yeah. No, point very well taken. And I want to make sure I'm giving you clean data, right? And data that we've processed, and data that, we have questions built in where we can kind of pick up on joke responding or things that maybe aren't true responses. And I want to make sure I'm giving you back data that I believe in, which takes a little bit of elbow grease.
So to say a kid is taking the survey and he or she decides, this is boring, I'm done.
Yeah,
like it doesn't survey.
Yeah, we can often pick up on that, right? You can look at the pattern of responses if they're always clicking the first response. If we have a few questions in there that say like, click item 4 or click item 2, right? Just a very straightforward.
They get factual and honest answers is what I'm kind of.
Will the students know it's anonymous?
Yes.
Yes.
So with the anonymous part though, I do, in a small town like ours.
Yeah.
Well, third letter of your first name, first 3 letters of the road that you live on. You give me those and a yearbook with color pictures. I don't know how anonymous that really is.
Yeah.
Is that, how did you come to those unique identifiers? Because that is in a smaller area.
Yeah.
It's not anonymous. There's not a lot of people moving houses here. So they're same roads. They've got older brothers, people know who they are.
talent like that.
Yeah, but nobody has access to that information.
No, they do.
But they don't have our yearbook?
Okay, here's the thing. The information's out there.
I hear it.
And it is a privacy concern that in smaller towns, that kind of metadata can be used to identify people. To say that it's completely anonymous is not completely 100% accurate.
I'll say as a single, I'll speak for myself, I'm not a single parent. I'll speak as a parent of a student in 9th grade, and I've had 2 graduate from the school. I'd like to know if my son is using, and I'm not aware of it at home.
I don't think you're gonna find out through a survey.
Oh, well, you might.
You might, they
You-
might
you-
be
you
more
might.
apt to be honest if they
So-
know it's anonymous.
Yeah,
It's just another tool to help identify, you know, it's another tool to get
You
us.
know,
to
look, we have NAT, we have SAT, like we, you know, like
Yeah.
honestly, I think this is a great avenue, like I really do.
It can't hurt.
And going back to their core value, youth are the experts in their own experience. If you don't ask them, we don't know, they don't tell us, they're the experts.
And I think, you know, starting to kind of set a culture around this being an okay thing to ask about, right, and to talk about. And but let me address the point of the linking code, because I think this is a really important piece, and a piece, frankly, I'm incredibly excited about with what we will be able to do with this survey. And makes this survey unlike any other survey that is out there. It's not like the YRBS or Monitoring the Future, or Metro West, anything like this. So what do we mean by the linking code? Excuse me. Excuse me, my Dayquil's wearing off. So we do not ask any contact information in the survey. So we don't ask name, phone number, anything like that. We ask a handful of kind of odd questions, right? So what is the 3rd letter of your middle name? What's the 1st letter of the street that you lived on in 5th grade? Your hair color? What these questions are used to do is to create an anonymized linking code. So a code that in aggregate, right? So pulling out those letters together creates a unique code for each individual over time. So what this is going to allow us to do is, if we administer the survey in year 1, and then administer the survey again in year 2, we can extract that linking code, again, not the raw data, but the linking code, and be able to say a student in 9th grade, John Smith in 9th grade, who had X, Y, and Z symptoms of depression, was more likely to initiate substance use in 10th grade. We're able to see that students in 9th grade with symptoms of anxiety are 4 times more likely to progress to frequent alcohol use, whatever it may be. You cannot ask those longitudinal questions without having a within subject data set. So person 1 and person 1 is the same in year 1 and year 2. Most surveys are cross-sectional, right? So we can just look at a cohort in 9th grade and a cohort in year 1, a cohort in year 2. Now, with the question of the anonymity of that data, a few mitigating factors. So one is the only people who have access to this data set are people who are credentialed through us, our trained staff. It's stored on a password protected file behind Harvard firewall on this encrypted data set, right? There is nobody on staff who has the skills or expertise to, in any sort of reasonable way, get from these 8 letters to an identifiable person. Now, each question, I will say, is completely optional. So if students don't feel comfortable answering it, they can skip any question they want in the survey, including those linking code questions, without any sort of penalty, without being able to discontinue the survey. Excuse me. The other thing that I will say is that when we extract the data, once we create the linking code, so let's say John Smith is going to get a code based off the responses of those items, 4B23R7. I don't know what that is, right? All of the raw data, I don't care what color hair somebody has, right? I have no scientific questions about that. That's all essentially discarded. The only thing that is then attached to that record is that unique code. There is no way to get from that unique code to an identifiable person, if that makes sense. Does that answer those questions?
No. All right.
Her questions.
Anybody else? I think we're good.
All right. Well, I appreciate all of your time. I know we took well more than our 10 to 15 minutes allotted, but I appreciate you hearing about right?
Just a little bit.
That's kind of my
Thank
MO.
you for muscling through this.
Yes.
Oh,
Right here.
I appreciate your time. I appreciate your interest in the program and for everything that you guys are doing in the district. So please reach out to us. Let us know how we can, beyond this program, how we can be a resource for the district. If there are presentations or consultations you need around any of the programming that you're doing, we're here to support you in anything that you need. And then with regard to this program, Mike, maybe just will connect and let us know what next steps are, but feel free to reach out if there are any questions that were not adequately addressed today. Happy to talk offline with anyone. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, take
Thanks,
care.
everyone.
She's fantastic.
All right, so this is a first. We've never had one go this long. So I have some procedural questions to Amy and the superintendent.
Yes.
The next two items that we got for educational presentation, her goals and the curriculum program updates. What does the agenda look like? What does the agenda look like, Amy, at the next meeting? Can we push those two to the next meeting? Because I think in the essence of time, I think we're looking at, I think we can get through the action items pretty quick.
I've got a wife at home that I gotta get to.
Absolutely. Well, that's why I'm asking the question. So is that something that's doable, that we can push those two to the next meeting?
Sure, I'm fine with it.
All right. Policies, just a quick update. We met today with Liz LaFond and I guess we do this subcommittee too, but we'll go too quick. We started section A for our policy review. Once we get that done, we will bring that back to the committee for a first review. What we're planning on doing going forward, though, is when we're getting ready to do chapter B or C or D, we will bring and put as part of the agenda the entire section. We'll give it to you so that you can review it, and that will be considered the first reading notification that we're basically going to be starting that in subcommittee. So it'll make that go a little quicker through the process. Like synopsis.
Yeah, first reading is gonna consist of the current version unedited. And then we go through it, and then second reading consists of the revised version.
Yeah.
And then third reading, we vote on. So it just expedites the process a little bit without removing the 3 readings.
Okay,
Good luck.
other thing under policies, and I don't really know procedurally how we do this, but I'm just gonna bring it up anyway. One of the options that we had on the agenda for the next meeting, which we talked in subcommittee today, was concerning this survey about whether we want to engage or look at adjusting one of our policies to require any surveys asking these sensitive questions to be opt-in. I certainly got a number of my questions answered tonight with respect to sending out a new letter with clear information that makes it very identifiable to the parents so that they know exactly what they're looking at. I don't know, based on what we heard tonight, whether that needs to come up. I'm just looking for, we can put it on the agenda and talk about it. If anybody has any concerns, we don't have to take an official vote. Is that something that we want to bring on the agenda, or are we just want to leave it where it is right now and just kind of see how this rolls? It's always fun.
My opinion, leave it.
Okay, no, that was, I just thought I'd bring it up so that saves us some time next time.
Yep, I say leave it as is.
Leave it.
Everybody else?
As long as we get full disclosure.
No,
wanna
I agree with
see-
you.
I don't want to see another survey come through with half the questions. And
No.
like you said,
I agree.
the questions were there last week, then I looked at them again and they were gone.
Yeah.
As long as a parent and not a school committee member, I am given full transparency of what you are asking my children. I'm okay.
Agreed. And I was
don't
happy
think
that
that's an
you.
unreasonable.
I will say
request?
some surveys that we do, as Chairman Stevenson knows, you have to come to the school to see the questions. If you want to see them as a parent, because we cannot release them to the public, but you can come into the school and see the questions.
Yeah, and
I just want to be fully
No,
transparent with the
and
public.
that's
on that.
correct, but I guess the only thing related to that is that we need to make sure that all the personnel at the school understand that, because when I did go to get it, I had to jump through a couple hoops in order to be able to see it. So we just got, you're absolutely correct. We can't just disclose this, all of them. Some of them are
Mhm.
private, protected surveys that they don't want out in the public, which I can certainly understand. They spend a lot of money creating these things. But we can see them as parents or school committee members in the office. They're clearly identified that way, correct, Superintendent, like when they are that?
Yes.
So as long as everybody in the chain understands what's able to happen, that's perfect. Okay, all right, let's get to action items. Superintendent Willard.
Okay, move to approve the 22-23 home education plans HS 22-23-40 through HS 22-23-51 recommended.
So,
Anybody have any concerns on that? Can I get a show of hands to accept the motion? Amy, let the record show the motion passes 7-0-0.
Move to appoint Robert Stevenson as the official voting delegate to the 22-23 Mass Annual Meeting recommended.
so moved?
Okay.
Any questions, concerns on that one?
No,
Can I
that's a rotating
Yeah,
position.
Pat
So
did it
Pat
last
did
year.
You did it.
I'll go this year. See what happens.
Probably go next year.
Did I do it last year?
Yeah, you
Yes,
did it
you
like-
did.
All right, can I get a show of hands to approve the motion? Amy, let the record show the motion passes 7-0-0.
Move to approve the 22-23 out-of-state field trip to New York, New York City Broadway Theater performance recommended
So moved.
happily.
Yeah, I just saw that musical about a month ago. It's fantastic. Yeah, the music is, the students are gonna love it. Very, very good. Any questions on that? Get a show of hands to approve. Amy, the record show, the motion passes 7-0-0.
Move to approve the 22-23 fundraiser flower bulb sale to benefit the 2024 international travel recommended.
So moved.
Any questions on that?
No.
Show of hands to approve the motion. Amy, let the record show the motion passes 7-0-0. All right, Superintendent, you are up again.
So under my reports, it's quick. We had a meeting with the police chief and some of the detectives and the sergeants regarding campus security. And they are in full support of closing our campus during the school day. Because as you know, when parents arrive at the school, you have to sign in order to get access to the building. Well, when our kids are outside, there's no sign-in sheet and people can just free roam our campus. So they were working with us on figuring out a way to do a joint communication between the Southwick Police Department and the school district that we will be closing the campus we have a tentative date as of October 1st. Have we heard anything from them since that? We're just waiting on the signs. We're just waiting on the signs, but I do have a copy of what we worked on with the local police that will be going on the track, which is going to be a big deal for the community, which is why it really needs to be a joint. They're bringing it to the select board. The select board is in full support of this. So it will be a closed campus, no public use of track, fields, or playgrounds during school hours, Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 4, per order of STGRSD. Violators will be trespassed. So that is our sign. It will be on all different areas around the campus in order to create a safety issue.
Can I just request that if the Granville and Collins select board members have not been
Notified?
informed, you include them?
Mhm.
Because I remember when we needed to procure funding for the playground, use by the public was an
Yes.
important incentive.
Mhm.
So, it's just, it needs, because all three towns purchased it,
Right,
it needs to go to all three towns.
and they can still use it, just not during school day.
Fully understandable. Yeah, I fully support, just we need to be fully transparent.
And it has some times on there, right, Jen?
7:30 to 4, yes.
Can we maybe put that on the scrolling marquee in town, only because there are a lot of elderly people that utilize.
They
that track.
do, and that's my issue, like, we were gonna do
Channel
like
15.
8, we moved it back to 7:30, because I know they do walk. Yes, it's going to be, the police are going to be sending something out, I will talk to them about putting it on the electric marquee. And we will be sending something out, but we want to do a joint
They'll probably do
communication.
like one of those robocalls.
They will.
when they-
And just foreseeing something.
They will reach the community.
So we have faculty members that walk the track during the day. So just putting that out there that, like, I'm not saying a faculty member shouldn't be allowed to do it.
Mhm.
But what I'm saying is if a community member drives
See
by
somebody
and a
walking.
faculty member is walking the track,
Right.
then we're gonna get some Facebook blow up.
Yeah.
So just putting
Good
that out
intel.
there.
Thank
That's a
you.
good-
Good point.
And
Yes,
if they want to
thank you.
walk, they don't necessarily need to walk the track during school days, right? But just-
I've seen them.
Listen, if I worked here, I would. I mean, I'm speaking
Understood,
from
but I
personal
guess
experience.
if you're good, if we're gonna make a structural policy change that for the safety of the kids at the school, that we are going to eliminate any outsiders from being on that track, it should be any outsiders. If.
It's a tricky
That's a
one
tricky
because
situation
they're,
because they're not
They're
outsiders.
insiders.
Yeah.
Understand.
They're
but-
inside.
yeah.
They've been quarried, they've been fingerprinted, they've been entrusted with the care and custody of the students
Yep,
all day
exactly.
long.
So I'm not saying they
So
should
I'm not saying they should have access,
No, no.
I'm just saying it's a
I'm
different,
not saying they
Yeah.
should be allowed to. I'm just pointing out hair bows.
maybe.
So how,
Like a green t-shirt, now we people go, oh, it's green.
it will.
Right.
yeah,
Did anybody
because
drive this? Was there something behind this that drove this?
I think the police were getting a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
About our campus being open during the school day. Mhm. And there's parents or there can be custodial issues sometimes and teachers don't always feel comfortable bringing the kids outside because anybody can just walk in, like they can't just walk into our school and we can keep the kids safe, but anybody can just walk onto our campus, anybody. And it raised a level of concern between the
I mean, even
schools and the
closing the track,
police.
stop that unless you're gonna close the gates and lock them up.
So what
I
are,
mean,
what are
that's the-
hours? 7:30
To 4.
To 4. Oh, see, I mean, now I'm.
So if a kid
now I'm
goes
being
home sick
disqualified.
and you need to pick
I
them up,
walk after school sometimes when I pick my kids up.
What'd you say?
so let's just say, Joey's sick.
Yeah.
Get him after school.
You could sign into the school.
So still do.
You can
Yep,
still
still
drive.
sign in.
Full drive.
You could drive in. Oh, yeah,
It's
yeah,
not-
yeah, yeah.
Right, but say like,
Right, correct.
my workday ends at 2:30, right? If I don't pick my kids up until after practice at 4:30, I've been known to come here and walk the track in between.
Grab the bike path. That's what we're
So-
recommending.
You know what I mean?
Right there.
And so like if they use the track for turkey trot, because that's a thing. So what we're gonna have people signing at the.
They
track?
do, any parents who volunteer to be around the kids, they need to be fingerprinted.
Well, I
and-
know.
Yeah, so, of course, so, yes. So, yes.
It's fairly common to see that language and on other school campuses and other schools. And it's
Yeah.
been so for a long period of time.
Yeah.
We're kind of unique here where.
Well, we
had-
can, I guess we can
More
start
community
it and see
access
what
than
kind of
typical.
issues that arise and to be determined.
Mm.
All right.
Safety.
Oh, no, I get it. It's just,
Yeah.
that's a good, I
I'm
didn't
good
think
for
about
it.
that. What
Yeah.
if somebody's out there and somebody's, wait a minute, I'm not allowed to walk on there. How come somebody else is out there? They may not know, I mean,
I'm anticipating some,
pushback.
pushback, which is why it's really important. I mean, let's be honest, I've been doing this for my 7th year. I mean, I come into school early some days, I come into school, I leave before 4 o'clock some days. I see people on our track.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a community asset.
And in a
Oh,
perfect
yeah,
world, it
squishy.
shouldn't be a problem,
Right.
but we've had way too many school shootings
It
and.
feels good to walk out.
Yeah, and my biggest concern isn't even the school shooting, it's some of the custodial issues that we deal with.
Yes.
And I think that's the bigger concern for some of our teachers as well.
Yeah.
It's not being able to protect children.
Yes, I agree with you.
All right.
By custodial, you don't mean our custodian.
No, I
So it looks like
don't.
30 seconds, I'm like,
Again,
wait a
it's a
minute.
stakeholder, that's
Oh,
the
wait a minute.
stakeholder word, Chairman Stevenson. that
No, no,
I
I
use.
got it. I'm like, the custodians have issue.
Custodial
No, it
parent.
took me 30 seconds. but
Okay.
Steve,
So on our
was-
guys having a
did
bad
you
rep.
see me
Yeah.
kind of wrap my head around?
Yeah,
like,
we were both trying
Okay.
to wrap our.
No,
I'm like, what?
what am I education,
All
I'm
right.
sorry.
So, Mr. President, anything from your section of the?
Nothing of significance. Our
right.
auditors have. Our auditors have wrapped up their field work. They've got virtually everything they need from us. The one last thing they're waiting for is some year-end appropriation transfers. I want to have the finance subcommittee look at. So we do need to schedule a meeting. Hopefully we can get something scheduled next week if that works for.
Yeah, well, wouldn't we have one regularly scheduled for next Thursday?
Probably, but I.
No, Amy's shaking her head. no.
Yeah, I don't know if.
I thought it was the third.
I don't know if the
Thursday.
standing meeting extended itself on the new school
okay.
calendar.
Didn't we used to do it on the third Thursday at 10 a.m. or something like that?
Yeah,
I don't know.
so.
Usually I get a text from Amy saying, are you coming in? And I remember it's on.
Yeah, so there's that. We're starting our work on our end of year financial report, and immediately following that, we'll be submitting for our excess and deficiency certification. So we're actually ahead of schedule on all three of those things, so.
And then we're looking at rescheduling a follow-up meeting with our building and grounds project with the gentleman, right?
Yes, I don't know if you saw.
I said, he'll get back to us in like a week and a half or so.
Yeah, I think even less than that. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Even better. So, well, it's, we met,
That's okay.
yeah, we met with him and he finally got back to Steve, so it's at least moving.
Yeah.
All right.
Same with our architectural design work on our more secure vestibule at public school. That architect has gotten back to us indicating we should have something as far as initial plans.
Fantastic. Great. All right. Does anybody have anything to bring up from subcommittees? I don't really want to go through everyone. Does anybody got anything that's pertinent that we need to do?
No.
Okay, fantastic. The only update that I've got related to Steve is that we've Ted and Pat and I have gone through the initial bunch of surveys. Annie's getting the rankings, and then I asked her what's next, because I don't know where we go next, but we had a number of people that we looked at, so hopefully we'll whittle that down and move towards getting you guys a meeting shortly here where we've got finalists that we can present to the world.
Amy, should we leave all of the ones that we're pushing to next schedule in the green folders?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Just leave the stuff we didn't get to.
Fantastic.
What do you mean? I have notes on everything, like, I don't know what's
It
that.
stays in your folder.
Okay, we've got nobody here in the area for public
So
comments.
it's just these
let's
two
move
you
on.
guys want to leave in your folders.
Anybody got anything for old business?
No.
Anybody have anything for new business?
No.
All right, I will entertain a motion to
Don't
adjourn.
forget Steve.
No, I-
No move. Oh.
You
You gotta do that
seconded-
first.
You seconded it before the so I will show of hands to adjourn the meeting. Amy, let the record show the motion passes 7-0. Thank you, everybody, for the evening, and have a great evening.
Thank you, everybody.
So our girls are in Northampton right now.
Tell me how we get.